Congress may be on summer vacation, but there's no way it can ignore the crisis in Syria. House Speaker John Boehner has written to the White House, and more than 100 lawmakers from both parties have signed a second letter asking for more information about possible U.S. military action. Democratic Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey is with us. He's chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
You're in favor of this attack.
I'm in favor of making sure that we send a global message that the use of chemical weapons in violation of international law against innocent civilians is something that cannot stand. And that's the key issue. It's beyond Assad and Syria. It's really a question of whether or not you send an international message that weapons like chemical weapons cannot be used against innocent civilians.
We had retired General Anthony Zinni on earlier in this broadcast, and he said it can't be just one and done. You can't assume that we're not going to have to do more. Are you concerned about that?
Well, look, I think that there are several options for the administration to consider. They can take missile attacks against some of the critical elements of the Assad regime, having them get a message that there are consequences for using chemical weapons. They might look at the particular troops that ultimately the Assad regime has in eastern Damascus and strike at them, sending a message to everyone in the Assad regime that when you use chemical weapons, there's a consequence. There is a more difficult path forward looking at how you eliminate the chemical weapon caches throughout Syria. That's a more difficult challenge. But the president has a series of options. And this is not about regime change, nor is it about a long-term engagement, nor is it about boots on the ground. But if why
isn't it about regime change?
Because at the end of the day, that would be a far more complicated effort. That would be a prolonged effort. And to the extent that anyone should seek regime change, it should be the vetted Syrian rebels that ultimately want to fight for freedom in their own country.
Would it be all right, I know you've called this one of the greatest humanitarian crises, would it be all right to take action without approval from Congress?
Well, the president has, under the War Powers Act, the ability to go ahead, if he believes the national interest and security of the United States is at stake, to act. If that action goes beyond 60 days, then he needs to come to the Congress. I personally would like to see him come for congressional approval, but I also think that time of the essence here.
Now, some key congressional leaders are meeting this afternoon to get the information. What are you expecting to hear? What do you want to hear?
Well, I'll be on that call, and the reality is that I hope to hear, and I've had some of these discussions already, the underpinnings of the intelligence. From my understanding, both the nature of the weapons that were used, the delivery system, the nature of the attack itself, pretty much makes it rather clear that only the regime itself, or elements of the regime, had the capacity to do that. And that speaks to who is responsible here at the end of the day.
If we do take action, are you concerned about retaliation against U.S. citizens in this country and abroad?
I worry already when you have Syria evolving into a failed state, when you have Hezbollah there backed by Iran, when you have al-Qaeda elements there, that what we'll have is a country in which ultimately attacks against the United States and or our interests and allies within the region can be levied. And so at the end of the day, at least there must be a confinement that chemical weapons is not a vehicle of destruction that you can use.
How soon do you think this attack is likely to happen, if it happens?
I don't think the president's made an absolute decision, but I would say after UN weapons inspectors leave Syria,
which is Saturday,
that puts us sometime this weekend or early next week.
And what do you say to Americans who say, look, we're involved in enough conflicts, we don't need to get in another one?
Well, the reality is, unfortunately, we can't insulate ourselves in the world. You're looking at someone who voted against the war in Iraq when the war vote was popular. I don't do this, I don't take this position lightly, but the reality is, if we do not act, we are going to have a global message that the use of chemical weapons against citizens, including against our troops potentially in other parts of the world, our allies in other parts of the world, can be had without consequence.
Senator Menendez, thank you.
Thank you.